Well, good day, everybody. Welcoming you on this very exciting day as we are starting in on Deuteronomy. So, this is the Bible in a year, 2021, and we're on day 70. And we are doing chapters 1 and 2 of Deuteronomy. And Deuteronomy is very exciting. And the reason it's very exciting is because Deuteronomy fills in some of the gaps for us. We have gone through Numbers, Leviticus, and Numbers, which was really great in the things that it shared with us, but it gave us an overall. And what I love about Deuteronomy now is Deuteronomy comes along and it fills in some of the cracks, some of the crevices, some of the missing pieces. We get to listen in on conversations that we didn't get to hear in previous books. And I always find that Deuteronomy just nicely explains everything that we've just read to the extent of really exposing Father's heart. So I really get excited about Deuteronomy. So Moses says right here, these are the words that Moses spoke to all Israel across the Jordan River in the desert on the plain across from Zuph between Paran and Tophel, Laban, Hezroth, and Dizahab. Okay. Um, so, uh, what has happened here is there has been 40 years. Doesn't feel that way, right? Because we've just read all of it. But here they are in the Moabite territory. Uh, they are exactly where they were when we left, when we finished Numbers. They're in the same place. This is a continuation now. And what's going to happen before Moses leaves is that we are going to be represented with the law, because it has been 40 years since it has been presented. So this is what happens on the anniversary of the giving of the law. It's a retelling of it because this is a new generation. Nobody is in existence anymore that first received it, except for Joshua, Caleb, and Moses here. Um, so this is a preparation for moving into the promise itself. Um, the land itself is only part of the promise, so that's why I refer to the promise. So they're moving into the promise, and this is going to fill those gaps that I was talking about. So let's get in on this because I do apologize for the length that it will be today. Verses 12 to 13 of chapter 1. But how can I handle all your troubles, burdens, and disputes by myself? Now, for each of your tribes, choose wise, discerning, and well regarded individuals. I will appoint them as your leaders. So we see the leadership structure explained here. But what I find very interesting is the people themselves chose the leaders. We get this kind of feeling that Moses made all these decisions, Moses dictated. That's not what was happening here at all. It's the leaders were chosen by the people, presented, and then Moses appointed them as the leaders. So the final say, the final authority came from Moses because he's representing Yahweh. But the people themselves put forward those who they considered to be wise, discerning, and well regarded individuals. So the structure in this section is being explained. Okay. Um, because it is a matter of after the fact. You got to keep that in mind. This is after that. Moses is explaining how they got to this point, how the leadership structure is in place. And then we see the charge that was given to the judges. At the same time, I commanded your judges, listen to your fellow tribe members and judge fairly. So listen, don't dictate. Listen to your fellow tribe members and judge fairly. Whether the dispute is between one fellow tribe member or between a tribe member and an immigrant, don't show favoritism. Got to be fair in this. This is important. Fairness is important to Yahweh. That's a value there, people. Write it down. It's a value. Yahweh holds up this value of fairness very highly. Don't show favoritism in a decision. Hear both sides out, whether the person is important or not. Don't be afraid of anyone, because the ruling belongs to God. And any dispute that is too difficult for you to decide, bring to me, and I will take care of it. That's a charge to the judges. So, fairness, highly prized there. In verse 22, again, we see some things that we didn't see before. The spies were not Moses' idea. Look at this. Then all of you approached me, saying, let's send spies ahead of us. They can check out the land for us. Then they can return with word about the route we should use and bring a report about the cities that we'll be entering. So the whole spy thing was the people's idea, and it didn't really work out because the report that they brought back also included the challenges, and the challenges scared the people. And we know what happened with that. In fact, we spend a little bit of time here because it's a big deal. And we see here what was the factor in them not going forward. But you weren't willing to go up. You rejected the Lord your God's instruction. You complained in your tents, saying things like, the Lord hates us. That's why he brought us out of Egypt to hand us over to the Amorites to destroy us. What are we doing? Our brothers have made our hearts sick by saying, people far stronger and much taller than we live there, and the cities are huge with walls sky high. We see the descendants of the Anakites there. So fear was the factor in their failure here. The spies that it was their idea to send in. The spies came back with this glowing report, but also of these dangers. And the people focused upon the dangers. They focused upon their fears, and they let the fears overwhelm them. So they stepped into a place of disobedience. That's what fear will do with you every time. The fear will cause you to react instead of respond. And reactions are always terrible. And so we see here what Moses' message was to them at the time. What was his counsel to them? In verse 29 to 31. But I said to you, don't be terrified. Don't be afraid of them. The Lord your God is going before you. Now, they have a history, don't they? He will fight for you just as he fought for you in Egypt while you watched, and you just saw him do in the desert. Throughout your entire journey until you reach this very place, the Lord your God has carried you just as a parent carries a child. So he has earned their trust. This isn't a blind trust. This is, look at what he's done for you. See, we talk about blind faith all the time, but people, look at what the Lord has done for you. Look at what he's done for you. He has given you reason to put your faith in him. He has given you reason to trust him. That's what Moses' message was to them. And then, verses 32 to 33, but you had no faith in the Lord. You had no faith in the Lord. Those are quite the words. Quite the words. And we know each one of us, as we read that, it kind of, there's a conviction that comes there. The number of times in our life where we were in a position where we needed to show faith and we failed in it. You guys know that, but we're not supposed to live in that place of shame. We're just supposed to look at what resulted from that, because we didn't trust him, because we didn't act on that trust, because we didn't act on that thing of faith. We didn't put our faith in him. But you had no faith in the Lord your God about this matter, even though he went ahead of you, scouting places where you should camp, in fire by night, so you could see the road you were taking, and in cloud during the daytime. And there's always consequences when we decide to live for ourselves instead of for his glory, because his glory is revealed in our faith, in acting upon, giving him the opportunity to show his great love for us. It brings him glory. But look at what happens. But you had no faith in the Lord about this matter. I'm just repeating myself, aren't I? Okay, I left out the scripture there. So Yeah, you had no faith, right? Um, verses 34, 35. Just a second here. Okay, so the slide was a little messed up, so let's just bring up the scripture here. It says in Deuteronomy 1, 34 to 35, the Lord heard what you said. He was angry and he swore, not even one of these people, this wicked generation, will see the wonderful land that I promised to give to your ancestors. There are consequences when we don't live in that relationship of faith that he's brought us into. Um, we need to understand that. We need to understand that this is what he's called to, this place of faith. And when we don't, the things that he's trying to protect us from, the places that he's trying to bring us into for his glory, as well as for the good of whatever the project is, whatever the mission is, man, it gets messed up. He's going to do it another way. We may not be included in that way, and that's really the message of this whole thing. Um, the plan will move forward. See, we can't frustrate his plan. He'll do it without us. Now, as for your toddlers, those you said would be taken in war, and your young children who don't yet know right or wrong, you they will enter the land. I will give it to them. They will possess it. So, like, yeah, you guys, no, I'm leaving you out of the plan now. But your children, the ones that you supposedly were trying to protect, they will be the ones to possess the promise. So there are things that when we fail to move into, when we fail to move into that place, we're actually giving up on the promise. We're giving up on the thing that the Lord wants to do. And yeah, those are horrible consequences. Those are horrible effects from our lack of faith. His plan will still go forward. It will still be completed. Don't think it won't be. Um, he's gonna use somebody else, and that's a terrible place to be. Uh, so let's move to Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 1. And here we see 40 years summed up in a paragraph. You ready for this? Um, next, we turned around and headed back towards the wilderness. So this is after they've been rejected. Okay, they try to go up and possess the land. You know that, right? They changed their mind. They tried to possess it, but it was too late. Yahweh had already pronounced his judgment on this and what the consequences would be. He wasn't with them. The anointed wasn't with them to take the land. So the things that they were afraid of actually chased them back out, killed some of them, and so as a result now. Next, we turned around and headed back toward the wilderness along the Reed Sea Road, exactly as the Lord instructed me. We traveled all around Mount Seir for a long time. Don't you just love that? A long time. A long time adds up to 40 years. Well, to be exact, to 38. We'll look at that in a second. And here's a conversation that we didn't hear in you know the whole thing when they were starting moving out of the desert and they were coming across these different territories and lands that belonged to descendants of other family members like Esau. So we come here and command the people as follows: you are about to enter into the territory of your relatives who live in Seir, Esau's descendants. They will be afraid of you, so watch yourselves most carefully. He's not saying go and attack them. It's saying they're gonna be afraid of you. And when people are afraid, they react very poorly. So be careful here. And this is there's conversations here that we didn't get to hear in the other books. And in verse 7, we see here the the blessing. Okay, they're being reminded here. No doubt about it, the Lord your God has blessed you in all that you have done. He watched over your journey through that vast desert. Throughout these 40 years, there's the timeline for you. Throughout these 40 years, the Lord your God has been with you. You haven't needed a thing. You haven't needed a thing. That's blessing. He has been with you. He has provided. He has been your protector. He has been with you. He has been your provider. He has been with you. You haven't needed a thing. And here in verse 9, then, again, further instructions. The Lord said to me, don't aggravate Moab. He's warning them. That you see it right here. Don't aggravate Moab. Don't fight them in battle, because I won't give any part of their land to you as your own. I have given Ar to Lot's descendants as their property. Okay, so no, I haven't sent you in to go against Moab. I don't want you fighting with them. This property belongs to Lot's descendants. And then we get this time reference thing. Okay, we get exactly. It took us a total of 38 years to go from Kadesh Barnea, so that's where they entered the desert, until we crossed the Zered Ravine. It was at that point that the last of the previous generation, every one of the fighting age in the camp, had died, just as the Lord had sworn about them. It's amazing stuff, isn't it? 38 years in the desert, from the moment they entered it to the moment they came out, and they're coming into some Canaanite land. They're coming through some Moabite, and so on. Okay, so 38 years in the desert and 2 years. Okay, so it's 40 years, but it's 2 years of preparation for possession. Yeah, it just sounds like it's a week or so, but it's a lot longer. In verses 18 and 19, today you are crossing through the territory of Moab and Ar, and you will come close to the Ammonites. Just like he said about the Moabites. Don't aggravate them. Don't aggravate them. Don't fight with them, because I won't give any part of the Ammonites' land to you as your own. I've given it to Lot's descendants as their property. You're not allowed to have any of it. And then in Deuteronomy verse 22, chapter 2, verse 22, we're going to do a little bit of look back here, okay? Just a little bit of looky here, because sometimes we just get this notion that the Yahweh is only occupied with Israel. But look, they were large, numerous, and tall, just like the Anakim. But the Lord completely destroyed the Zamzummim before the Ammonites, and they took possession of that area, settling in their place. That is exactly what God did for Esau's descendants, who live in Seir, when he completely destroyed the Horites in their presence, and they took possession of the Horites area, settling in their place to this very day. So it's just given us a little bit of, see, this is what I love about Deuteronomy, filling in things that we have not been aware of before. But the Lord has been occupied with these people. Okay, he has been making sure that they have a land that is their own, and Israel's not supposed to touch it. Verse 24, 25. So get going. Okay, he's telling him, get across the Arnon Ravine. Cross the Arnon Ravine. I have handed Sihon, the Amorite king of Heshbon, and his land over to you. Okay, of the Amorites. It's time to possess the area. It's time to fight him in battle. Starting right now, I'm making everyone everywhere afraid of you and scared of you. Once they hear news of you, they will be shaking and worrying because of you. And that's exactly what we read about as Joshua goes in to possess the land, which we'll read when we read the book of Joshua, that the nations were just full of fear about Israel. And that's what the Lord is doing in these small battles. Well, we consider them small compared to overall. quite large actually. And as they go in and they destroy these kings, fear is gripping the land, and that's exactly what the Lord wanted to happen. Um, Now we just read that, right? About Heshbon's king, um, right? Right? King Sihon. We just heard that the Lord had handed them over. So when we read earlier that Moses wrote to them asking permission to go through their land, saying that like we will pay for everything that we take, he already knew that the answer is going to be no, and he already knew that this was going to end up in a battle where they would end up defeating that king and taking the land. So when he wrote this, and I then sent messengers from Kedeth Keth, Kedmoth Desert to Sion, Heshbon's king, with words of peace. So he offered peace, but he knew what the outcome would be. That's the advantage of having Yahweh, as in doing what Yahweh tells you to do, and Yahweh telling you what's going to happen is that you're prepared. You're prepared. Then we see this thing in verse 34, and this is important because you're going to read it many, many times, especially in Joshua, under the ban. Okay, so we read, at that time we captured all of Sion's cities, and we placed every town, men, women, and children, under the ban. Now it's very specific here. It's men, women, children. Okay, it's not cattle, it's not buildings, it's not anything. It's specifically the people, men, women, and children under the ban. We left no survivors. Um, Under the ban meant everyone. In other cases, it could be also include everything, but in this case, it's everyone was destroyed at the instruction of the Lord to be offered up to him with no personal gain. So they don't get to get slaves out of this. They don't get to get wives out of this. They don't get to get house servants out of this. They ended up killing everybody. And again, for our sensibilities in the age in which we live, this is very harsh. But this is the Lord's justice. This is fair. You saw how keen he is about fairness. He's absolutely keen about fairness, and he wouldn't do anything out of fairness. And just as we read how he made room for Lot and stuff, I know without a doubt that he has sent warning to these people for generations, and he tried to communicate with them and reach out to them, and they did their own thing, and they rejected him. And the Canaanites, they had their terrible gods and everything that they worshipped, which were man-made, and were just plain ugly and went against everything that Yahweh stands for. And so because of their complete rejection of him, he has to completely reject them. And this is the consequences of that. We got to keep that in mind for the end times. We got to keep that in mind for the day of judgment, that those who rejected him, he will reject. Go away from me. I don't know you. Um, yeah, there's going to be no last minute reprieve. The only measure of grace is through Jesus Christ, and if they've rejected Jesus Christ, then this is how it's going to be. And we've got to get to that place of understanding people. He is a God of justice. So yeah, this is just the beginning of us going through this. There's going to be a lot of places where we get to hear conversations now and things that we may not have understood that we'll get to understand now. I do apologize for that error with the slide. Um, these things happen. Thank you guys for being on this journey with me. Thank you for accepting I'm just a human being, and I'm looking forward to the time we will get to spend together tomorrow. Be blessed, be encouraged. You are loved.